on corporate law. We've had some activist groups that believe that companies should address abortion, the Second Amendment, climate change, and ESG issues. In your view, can company directors be held liable for a failure to address social and political issues under Caremark and similar cases?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Under Delaware law, directors of corporations owe two overarching duties: the duty of care and the duty of loyalty. Delaware law requires that directors act in the best interest of the corporation, but there is a lot of deference that's afforded to directors in the exercise of their duties. The question about whether or not a director would be found liable for having breached their duties for not doing a particular thing would be a complex one that would require us to look closely into the facts of the case. But there is a lot of discretion for precisely how directors exercise their fiduciary duties.
In a conversation this year with Columbia Law School students, you suggested that corporate law, quote, is a vehicle by which society can tackle pressing social issues, end of quote. In your opinion, how could corporate law be used to tackle social issues?
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I don't remember that particular quote. I do remember the conversation and the question that was presented was, do directors have the leeway to consider ESG issues? That was the context. And I think that my answer was something like what I said to you a few minutes ago, which is directors of Delaware companies obviously owe those two overarching duties that I talked about. And but beyond that, Delaware is pretty lenient. That is, directors have a lot of discretion. So even though they have to act in the best interest of the company, they have a lot of discretion. A director may determine that he or she needs to consider specific issues, things like, I don't know what issues you might have in mind, but specific ESG issues, that's what that panel was focused on, in acting in the best interest of the company. And my statements were simply to say that's not automatically a violation of fiduciary duties under Delaware law. There's a lot of discretion under Delaware law.
You served as co-chair of the Delaware Supreme Court Diversity Strategic Planning Committee. I have this question. The report urged the Delaware Supreme Court to, quote, take steps to reduce implicit bias and identity threat in court environment. Give me your idea of what identity threat is and what steps should take to reduce implicit bias.
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I'm familiar with the report generally. I'm not familiar with that particular recommendation. I did serve on the committee, but the recommendations were made by a large group of people, and the recommendations were made to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has not adopted all of the recommendations, and we have not tackled that particular recommendation. So I'm not exactly sure what that specific phrase that you read, what's intended by that specific phrase. And it's not something that we have discussed and decided how to address.